Can you believe the value that the Zelda franchise has created for Nintendo? The Zelda games have become one of the most influential video game franchises we have seen. Over the past few decades, the game has helped carry the company. Zelda, paired with the Mario games and characters, have become the face of Nintendo. The Zelda games were actually inspired by Shigeru Miyamoto's adventures when he was a child. Like many kids, he would utilize his imagination and travel through the hills of Shinobi, Japan. They wanted to build a world of fantasy for their new video game creation. They wanted to take inspiration that the Western world would understand, but still utilize elements that they knew. One of the main references they utilized was The Lord of the Rings. The name of Zelda actually came from Miyamoto, who heard about Zelda Fitzgerald. He believed the name was pleasant and would be a good title for usage. Link was seen as being referenced from Peter Pan in the world of Disney fantasy. They wanted to pull together the uniqueness of stories that already existed, but also create a new story. The game series focuses on Link, who is an elf-like Hylian race, and Princess Zelda, who is a magical being, the reincarnation of the goddess Hylia. The game focuses on their adventures to protect and save the land of Hyrule from the evil Ganon. Ganon wants to make his own evil world through utilizing the Triforce. The Legend of Zelda was the first game in the series, which was released in Japan on February 21st, 1986. Originally, it was released on the Famicom Disk System. Eventually, a cartridge version for NES would be released in the United States on August 22nd, 1987. The game featured an open-world concept with non-linear gameplay. It was very unique for the time period. A user could also play a second quest by registering the name Zelda or beating the first quest. Again, extremely unique gameplay for the time period. The second game in the series would be released for NES in December 1988. The game once again utilized a unique look for video games at the time, even featuring experience points from an RPG aspect. The game again followed Link throughout his adventures, trying to see the world in which he lived. Both of these games were released as gold cartridges prior to it being turned gray. The third game in the series would be A Link to the Past, which returned the top-down view. The game would also have a unique feature with an alternate dimension, which would be the Dark World. The game would be released on Super NES on November 21st, 1991. Nintendo would also utilize this game for their Game Boy Advance many years later in 2002 as a re-release to build more excitement for the system. The first ever game that would take on a different outlook would be Link's Awakening for Game Boy, which would be the first Zelda game to be made for a handheld system. The game, oddly enough, would be outside the world of Hyrule and not actually feature Princess Zelda. The game would also be launched for the Game Boy Color. All of these games would be in 2D, however, he would slowly see the transition to 3D as we got close to the 2000s. The Zelda team would take 5 years off while they began working on developing the new 3D version of their game. The first 3D game would be Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64. This would come out in November 1998. The game was very similar in structure as the previous core gameplay features of the other games. Ocarina of Time would go down as one of the best video games of all time and a fan favorite in the series. IGN and several other publications have called the game influential and life-changing for the video game industry. It was voted by Nintendo Power as the best game released for a Nintendo console. The game focused on unique button controls as you could control Link throughout the universe. The game was considered a technical marvel for the time with precise sword battles and control abilities. The game would allow unique things like riding a horse with the ability to battle from that horse. The game would be released in a collector's edition version with small pin and beautiful box artwork. The game would be re-released for GameCube in 2002 based on the popularity. It is considered by many to be the game that made people fall in love with video games. The follow-up game to Ocarina would be Majora's Mask, which was released in April 2000. This game would take many of the same elements from the previous, making slight improvements. The game would have added elements to it as well. The concept of it would be you are Link reliving the events of the past 3 days until you complete all the objectives. The game also allowed you as Link to turn into different unique beasts or creatures based on the power of the mask. Though the game had many positives, there were a few negatives as well, with many saying the game took on a darker tone than the previous. Once again, this game was a masterpiece in Nintendo's marketing machine, as they would produce special editions and create unique demand. In 2001 for Game Boy Color, the games Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages were released, which were a unique pairing of games that required beating the first to gain a password for the second. The game was also one of the few not to be fully developed by Nintendo. This would be developed by Flagship with the help of Nintendo. This game actually came from the concept of wanting to port the original Zelda games into Game Boy Color. However, they ran into several issues. The two games that they came out with were focused on puzzles and action, different from many of the other Zelda games. In the early 2000s, the Nintendo team began working on unique ways to utilize the characters. In 2002, they released for Game Boy Advance the game A Link to the Past. This game would be unique as it offered the first ever multiplayer aspect. The game would be popular for its different features. The game would also introduce the character Toon Link, aka just Link in cartoon character form. In December 2002, they would release the game The Wind Waker, which would be one of the poorest received Zelda games to date. The game was set on a group of islands where Link is trying to save his sister from Ganon. The game had incredible visuals, art, and storyline. However, it would not be able to reach the success they have saw with the other Zelda games, leading to them to want to change directions for future games. GameCube had a release called Four Swords Adventure in early 2004. The game was a port of the Four Swords multiplayer game from Game Boy Advance. They would then come out with another Game Boy Advance game called Minish Cap in the United States in January 2005. The game would be different from the previous as Link would have the ability to shrink in size, allowing him to travel to new areas. The first Zelda game for Wii was released in November 2006. The game would be named Twilight Princess, which was originally only supposed to be developed for GameCube, which changed once the development of the Wii occurred. The Wii game would be a mirror of that of the GameCube game to essentially turn everything around, making Link right-handed. This was to make the game easier for those who are playing with the Wii remote. The game focuses on young Link as he is transformed into a wolf. The game utilized more texture and more stylization to make it look and feel better than previous games. There would be two Nintendo DS games, Phantom Hourglass in 2007 and Spirit Tracks in 2009. The game used a newer engine allowing for cel-shaded 3D style. Phantom Hourglass was a sequel to the Wind Waker game. Spirit Tracks was the first game that allowed you to work as both Link and Zelda to complete a quest. Skyward Sword was the next Wii game in development. Originally slated to release in 2010, there would be delays. The game would come out in November 2011. It allowed usage of Wii's Motion Plus features. The game was an origin story of Hyrule and Ganon, and the game would utilize the unique marketing and sales of Nintendo, featuring a 25th anniversary CD of orchestrated music from the Zelda games. As Nintendo went into the 2010s into the present day, it brought changes in technology. A sequel for A Link to the Past would be produced for Nintendo 3DS, called The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds in 2013. It allowed more of an open-world concept. In October 2015, The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes would be released as a multiplayer game. The final Wii U and first Nintendo Switch game would be released on March 3, 2017, called Breath of the Wild. This game was again more open than prior, had multiple quests, and beautiful graphics. The creation of this game helped drive sales when the Nintendo Switch was released and made the console launch very successful. It is number 4 on the list of best-selling games for the Switch with $29.81 million worth of copies sold, only to be behind Mario Kart 8, Animal Crossing, and Super Smash Bros. A sequel of the game just came out on May 12, 2023, called Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom is a sequel to Breath of the Wild with a similar map, but with a new storyline and new Minecraft-like twist. It was highly anticipated, coming 6 years after Breath of the Wild. The new game has already sold over 500,000 physical copies just over release weekend. There have been around 26 titles for the Nintendo systems. Link and Zelda have lived as very important characters for Nintendo, as they were crossover characters in the Super Smash Bros. Franchise, but with the growing popularity of the Nintendo characters and the recent success of the Super Mario Land in Universal Hollywood and the recent movie success, people want more. Many fans are hoping that a Link and Zelda movie comes soon to expand the Nintendo Cinematic Universe further. Many believe that a live-action or animated movie series would add more depth to the characters, allowing for more character development and arc. Fans are now demanding Islands of Adventure at Universal Orlando to turn their lost continent into a Zelda land. They would like for the area to be transformed by these Nintendo characters, as the structures in place are already seen as similar to that of the Zelda worlds. What is your favorite Zelda game? Do you want to see a movie or theme park land be developed? What are your thoughts on the new Tears of the Kingdom game? Let us know. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow.
Believable truths.